Hey everybody, welcome to our poetry unit, Unit 2, Lesson 3. This lesson is going to focus around the concept of irony, and we have another poem to read and some questions to do based on the poem. This isn't a marked assignment, but certainly doing it's going to prepare you for the 3 marked assignments that we have in this unit. So it's called a formative assignment, which you will hand into the Dropbox. So looking at our learning goals and success criteria. So you're going to be able to understand what your concept of courage is. So this poem, like most poems, will ask us to reflect and think about the world we live in. And for your world, we're going to talk about what's the concept. What is your concept of courage? You're going to take a look and analyze the short story called Courage by Sexton for the 6 poetic devices that we've been talking about for the past 2 or 3 days. And then you're going to review how irony occurs in literature and then apply that to certainly Sexton's poem. So at the end, you're going to be successful when you can share your feelings with the concept of courage and write why you think that's important. Look up the meaning and importance of the poem from multiple standpoints: personal, poem's whole in the world. Share your thoughts with the class on a Padlet. We're going to do a little class discussion on your concept of courage, and then get an understanding of how an author uses irony to help people understand the message. So first thing is, irony. Irony is like we said before, it's not in every single poem, okay? As the other poetic devices of voice, tone, symbols, imagery, and persona are. You're going to get those in every single poem we do. Irony, that's not necessarily the case. It may not be in every poem, and a lot of times you have to use as much information as you possibly can in order to understand the irony in a piece. So sometimes it's information on page, sometimes it's background on an author, etc., which is what's explained here. So we talked about before in lesson 1 of this unit. We talked about irony is basically a discrepancy between 2 levels of meaning. Usually, when an author says one thing or means another, or you expect one thing to happen and something completely different happens. And in the third case, dramatic irony, where we know something that a character in whatever piece of literature that we're doing does not. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about irony here, and the one we get the most in poetry is verbal irony, sometimes situational. So this poem is a poem by Stephen Crane called "War is Kind." So it says, "Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind, because your lover threw wild hands towards the sky, and the affrighted steed ran on alone. Do not weep, war is kind." So that is verbal irony. The author doesn't really think that war is kind. And you can tell that by what he's saying here. He's talking about, a maid and a young lady weeping. It's like someone is riding on a horse and kind of throws their hands towards the sky. For me, that kind of means maybe he was shot, etc. While riding on his horse into battle. Do not weep, war is kind. Reading that line should make it seem strange to you. You should say, well, that doesn't make any sense. War isn't kind. It's the opposite of kind. And that's exactly what the author's purpose is. The author wants you to come up with the fact that war is not kind. It is a terrible, awful, violent thing, without telling you himself or herself. It's better if they can get you from point A to point B on their own without grabbing your hand and kind of walking you there and explaining, well, no, war isn't kind. That's not what I mean here. What I really mean is this. If you can come up with it yourself, that is excellent writing, and you're going to understand much more what they're trying to say. So by making this statement, the speaker actually conveys the opposite idea, that war is a cruel and mindless exercise of violence. So that makes this statement verbal irony. Do not weep, war is kind. So skillfully used, irony is a powerful way of making a comment about a situation or manipulating your emotions. The thing is about irony is you have to understand the author's being ironic, or you have to see the discrepancy. You have to see the fact that war is not kind. It's a terrible thing. And if you understand that, then you're going to get the irony. Verbal irony is what this is a case of. We get the most in poetry. Verbal irony is very close to sarcasm, but it's not exactly the same. So his use of the word kind in the poem "War is Kind" is verbal irony. That's what makes us think, no, that's not true. He actually means something else. So the author is saying one thing, but we know that he means something else. It's hard in writing because sometimes we can tell this when somebody's speaking to the tone of their voice. I can say the same statement this a couple different ways. I could say, the statement, you did a great job on that. I could say, wow, you really did a great job on that. And my tone of voice would say that's a positive thing. Or I could say it in a very sarcastic, kind of mean way. I could say, wow, yeah, you really did a great job on that. And it's the exact same statement, but, it means the opposite idea. And I think the example I used in the first video was when in the theater, when people, to wish someone good luck, they say break a leg. And that's obviously verbal irony. They don't really want that person to break a leg. That is they're just saying good luck. So, you have to use all the information you have on a poet. Sometimes knowing about a poet will help you understand the irony in the poem. For example, like in the first poem we did, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. The poem really is about, you break it down, the persona is pretty much a son talking to his father, begging him to fight against death. Dylan Thomas was a raging alcoholic, and he killed himself when he was 39 years old due to his alcoholism. But he wrote a poem the same year he died about the fact that you should fight against rage against the dying of the light, fight against death. So it's very ironic that it's situational irony here. We would expect one thing to happen and something completely different does. We would expect an author who understands how important life is and understands that you should fight against life if you're living a poor life or if you've wasted your life, that you don't just kind of walk out into death gently. We would expect that person not to go do the exact opposite thing he writes about and kill himself by wasting his life due to alcohol. So that's a very good example of situational irony. The more information you know about a poet sometimes, the better it is. So that's just a brief little blurb on irony. I hope you understand that. So we should be done reading up to section 3 of the novel, page 105. It's not like you're going to be tested on this today. We don't start it till next week. So, till I think our new unit starts on Thursday. So you have 3 or 4 days to get it done, and you really should be done that drama study prior to when we start it. I've given you a one poem to work on today for homework. You're going to submit it here in this Dropbox. The poem is titled Courage by Sexton. You can open it up, the Google Doc, and take a look at the poem. Here's the poem. And she wrote it in 1975. It was pretty much 1 year before her death as well. That's going to be part of the irony in here. So here's the poem. Please, before you do all the questions, please read the information about her here. It will help you, I hope, answer question number 6. As always, please, full opinion, using your quotations, and make sure that you hit on all aspects of each element. You have to talk a little bit about, use the language that we've used on the sheet that I gave you and we've used on these lessons in your answer to show that you really know and understand exactly everything that what's trying to be said in this piece, in your answer. And always, 3-step answer the question, provide a quote, and explain what the quote says. That's what's going to be expected on all of your work that comes in and is marked. Finally, last little piece is we have a Padlet here. Please click here, and you're going to basically comment on what Anne Sexton is saying about the concept of courage. So what do you think she's saying? What is her point? What is the theme really of what she's saying? And please back that up by using at least one direct quote. Also in your answer, you're going to give an example from your life or the world in general, but what you see as courageous, what you think is courage. Because in her poem, she's not necessarily what we think these great, these big grand efforts sometimes isn't really courage. She has a different view of sometimes what courage is. And I really like this view. I also agree with her in what she's saying. So there you go. There's a lesson for today. We're working up towards our summative in the next couple of days. Keep with it. If you're a little behind the lesson, that's okay. Just get your stuff in. That's the important part. And good luck with this.